We're good? Okay. Good morning. I'm Denise Smiler, Chair of the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board. I would like to ask everyone to please silence your cell phones and all electronic devices at this time. Also, while masks are no longer mandatory, please feel free to wear a mask if you believe it is required or necessary for your own well-being. With 5 board members present and Commissioners Dermody and Ralston present by telephone, I'd like to call today's meeting to order. Commissioner Dermody, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Madam Chair.
Excellent, thank you. Commissioner Ralston, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. With that being said, I'd also like to note for the record that in addition to the 7 board members participating today, we also have our ex officio members, Fred Strathmeyer, representing Russell Redding, Secretary for the Department of Agriculture, Kristen Heidingsfelder, representing Pat Brown, Secretary for the Department of Revenue, and Jennifer Langen, representing Stacy Garrity, State Treasurer. Thank you, ex officios, for joining us. I'd now like everybody to please stand and join me in a recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now have presentations of service awards for Gaming Control Board employees that will be made by our Executive Director, Kevin O'Toole. Kevin?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair Smiler, members of the board. It's always a great occasion to be able to recognize the loyalty and the dedication of employees who have worked hard for a long period of time. We do honor 10-year recipients and we honor 15-year recipients. And I always like to note on occasions, once a quarter, we recognize individuals. But currently we have 353 employees. 167 of those employees have at least 10 years of service. Am I okay, Richard? And that represents 47% of our employees. And 110 have reached 15 years of service, which represents 31% of employees. So I note that those percentages are going down a little bit. Some of our 15-year recipients are deciding that they have enough years in service to to resign and get all the welcome benefits of being long-term Commonwealth employees. So today I have 2 employees who are here to be honored in person, and I'm very appreciative of that. So Michael, our first recipient is Michael Rowland. Michael is here for his 15 years of service. He was hired on December 6th of 2008 as an assistant enforcement counsel, and today Michael serves as a senior enforcement counsel. Michael, congratulations on your service. We appreciate your work. Thank you very much. And I'd like Charles Leisher to come forward. Hello, Charles. Charles is here for his 10-year service award. He commenced employment here at the board on April 26th of 2014 as a statistician. And today he serves as a manager of the board's Office of Gaming Laboratory Operations. Charlie, thank you very much for your service and congratulations. I have a few additional individuals who were not able to come today, and I'd like the record to reflect them and that they will get a certificate as well. It's always great that we have terrific live streaming services, so all 8 of these remaining individuals may be watching us at this time. If they are, good morning. We have 2 employees who have reached their 15-year milestone, in addition to Michael. First is Linda Schramm. Linda was hired on January 5th, 2008 as an executive secretary for the Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement, and she holds that position today. Secondly, we have Luke Rogers. Luke was hired on January 6th of 2008 as a casino compliance representative. Today, Luke is an iGaming compliance representative for the Bureau of Gaming Operations. And we also have 6 additional employees who have reached their 10-year anniversary of employment with the board. The first is Andrew Dennis, who I'd like to recognize. In addition to Charlie, Andrew was hired on October 7th of 2013 as a casino compliance representative. Today, Andrew is a technical field representative at Rivers Casino Pittsburgh with the Bureau of Casino Compliance. Also on that same day, Douglas Kunst was hired with the board on October 7th of 2013 as a casino compliance representative assigned to the Meadows Casino with the Bureau of Casino Compliance. And Doug holds that position today as well. We also have Anthony Penna. Anthony was hired on January 21st, 2014 as a casino compliance representative, also assigned at the Meadows Casino with the Bureau of Casino Compliance, and Anthony holds that position today. Next, we have Percival O'Shaughnessy. Percy was hired on March 17th, 2014 as a technical field representative at Harrah's Philadelphia Casino with the Bureau of Casino Compliance. And Percy holds that position today as well. Next is Michael Lamb. Michael was hired on March the 24th of 2014 as a casino compliance representative at the casino at Nemacolin with the Bureau of Casino Compliance. And Michael also holds that position today. Finally, we have David Gaiman. David was hired on December the 12th, 2013 as an applications developer with the Office of Information Technology under the Bureau of Administration, and David holds that position today. So I'd like to congratulate all 10 of our Service Award recipients and thank them all for their service. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank all of you for your years of service to the board and to the citizens of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. By way of announcements, the board held an executive session yesterday, Tuesday, March 19th, to discuss personnel matters pending litigation and to conduct quasi-judicial deliberations relating to matters coming before the board. I'd also like to recognize Kristen Heidingsfelder, our ex officio designee for many years from the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue. Kristen recently announced her retirement from state service after a distinguished career with the Revenue Department and related to that, outstanding service to this board. Kristen, on behalf of the entire board, I would like to thank you for your years of service and wish you the best in your retirement.
Thank you.
Our first order of business this morning is the consideration of the board meeting transcripts and minutes from the December 13th, 2023 meeting and the January 24th, 2024 meetings. May I have a motion, please, to approve the transcript and minutes of the December 13th, 2023 meeting?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board approve the minutes and the transcript of December 13th, 2023 meeting.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted. May I now have a motion to approve the transcript and minutes of the January 24th, 2024 meeting?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickernell moves that the board approve the minutes and transcript of the January 24th, 2024 meeting.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted. We will now hear again from our Executive Director, Kevin O'Toole.
And I'm very glad to give a second presentation this morning. Thank you very much. So as we all know, the month of March is Problem Gambling Awareness Month, and I wanted to take the opportunity to raise awareness of certain self-help steps that any player with an online gaming account in Pennsylvania can use on their own to lessen the impacts of gambling on a player's ability to control their activity and stay clear of problem or compulsive gambling. Board regulations at Section 814A2 offer to players a number of responsible gaming self-imposed limits. These limits allow a player to control the amount of their deposits over a period of time. They allow patrons to set maximum amount limits for each wager that they place. It allows players to set a maximum amount of funds that they want to spend and potentially lose all of those funds, so they can set an upper limit. And it can be done on a daily basis. It can be done for a day. It can be done for a week. It can be done for a month or longer than that. And also, players can also self-impose on themselves a cooling off period with just one requirement, and that requirement is that the cooling off period must be a minimum of 72 hours. So it can be 3 days or any period longer than 3 days. And these are, as the name indicates, self-imposed limits. The online operators, in conjunction with our staff, at the launch of online gambling, whatever time frame that was, because we've had people launch, we've had companies launch, over the last 5 years on a fairly regular basis, but they incorporate into their systems that control the online gambling and control the registration process for online gambling, to incorporate those limits within their systems. So I also wanted to note that the board's Office of Compulsive and Problem Gambling, through Director Elizabeth Lanza, has been able to monitor the usage of these self-imposed limits. So on a monthly basis, she obtains statistics from the online gaming operators for their respective registered players during any particular month. And Director Lanza and her staff aggregate all those figures and have them available. So the most used limit that players choose is the deposit limit. And the second most used limit is the self-suspension cool-down period. During the month of January 2024, by example, the deposit limit was activated by players over 154,000 times. And the self-suspension cool-down period was activated over 78,000 times. So those are large numbers, but it is true that the number of players who have registered accounts are in the millions. So it's good to see these self-imposed limits used, the amounts that I just cited, but we would like to see them used even more. And these self-imposed limits are important because they provide players with controls over their gambling activity, and particularly with respect to online gambling on simulated slot machines and table games. And it's important to note that these self-imposed limits are in addition to any player who wishes to be on the self-exclusion list can also avail themselves of that service that the board performs. In a related effort, pursuant to the Gaming Act at Section 1211D1, the Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs, DDAP, coordinates the statutorily required annual report on the impact of online gambling on compulsive and problem gambling. The legislature adopted this requirement when online gambling was first authorized in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This report is written by a team of professors, researchers, and analysts from Penn State University once they complete and compile the current year's research of this topic. In its 2023 report, which was just recently issued on the impact of online gambling and compulsive and problem gambling. One of the more significant findings that they noted was that 16% of Pennsylvania adults reported that they engaged in online gambling during the year. This is an increase from 11% from the previous year's report. And it certainly would not be surprising if that percentage continues to rise in future years, which makes these self-imposed limits all the more important. So to conclude, there's always challenges that must be met to minimize compulsive and problem gambling. These challenges are in fact being met in Pennsylvania by efforts of the Pennsylvania Council on Compulsive Gambling, which does a fabulous job of awareness and education and training all throughout the year. They perform much of the training at the casino, land-based casinos, to ensure that the required personnel at those land-based casinos receive their annual training in compulsive and problem gambling. And it also is met by the Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs, DDAP. Not only do they coordinate that annual report that Penn State prepares, they service and provide oversight to the Compulsive and Problem Gambling Trust Fund, which allows DDAP to issue grants and contracts with single county authorities all throughout the Commonwealth, and that money goes directly to service providers. So any citizen of Pennsylvania who has a compulsive or problem gambling problem, if their insurance doesn't cover treatment for that issue, or if they don't have the funds to pay for that service, they can reach out to appropriate authorities and get the treatment that they need, and it would be paid through these grants. And last but not least, those challenges are met by the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board, as I have just laid out to you on some of the initiatives that we do here at the board. And this issue is one of the challenges is it's never going to go away. It's there when you start this job, and it's there when you end this job, so long as there's legal gambling. So it does allow regulators to think in creative ways to get people to understand if they do have a problem, there are services and techniques and tools that they can avail themselves of. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. We will now hear from our Human Resources Director, Danette Bixler-George. Danette?
Good morning, Chair, board members. The Office of Human Resources has two motions today for your consideration relative to the hiring of 4 individuals and the amendment of the pay structure for non-union employees. I would note that the number of individuals being presented to you has changed from the previous information that was provided to you yesterday. The following 4 individuals have completed the background investigation, interview process, drug screening, and are ready for presentation to the board. First, we have Dennis Lebo, who has been selected as an auditor in the Bureau of Gaming Operations and is recommended for hire by Paul Resch, the Director of Gaming Operations. Next, we have Julian Barton, who has been selected as a licensing technician in the Bureau of Licensing and is recommended for hire by Sean Hannon, Director of Licensing. Next, we have Tom Desidou, who has been selected as the Director of Information Technology and is recommended for hire by Claire Yantis, Administrative Director. And finally, we have Gavin Spallone, who has been selected as a statistician in the Office of Gaming Laboratory Operations and is recommended for hire by Heather Warner, Director of Gaming Laboratory Operations. Unless you have questions, I ask that the board consider a motion to approve the hiring actions as indicated.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board approve the applicants for hire as proposed by the Human Resources Director.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The second motion seeks to adopt amendments to the PGCB classification and compensation structure effective today, March the 20th, 2024. As you are aware, the original classification and compensation structure was adopted by the board in January 2011. In October 2019, the board adopted a new classification and compensation structure, which is a single pay structure for all non-union represented employees. This single pay structure was adjusted most recently on July the 1st, 2023. Almost didn't get that out. Currently, the Office of Human Resources is proposing 2 revisions to the management pay schedule for pay groups GM09 and GM10. The revisions will aid in maintaining equity with the Commonwealth Standard Pay Schedule, which is our primary comparator for compensation matters. It is recommended that the top or maximum of these 2 pay groups be aged another 2.25% at this time. With the board's adoption, the amended schedule will become effective immediately. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding to the changes in the compensation structure.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board approve the updated non-union pay schedule as proposed by the Human Resources Director.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danette. Next is our Office of Chief Counsel.
Morning, Chair, members of the board. Before the board today are just 2 petitions. Both of these petitions will be decided on the documentary record, as the Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection to the requested relief. In each of these matters, the board has, in advance of today's meeting, been provided with the complete evidentiary record. The first petition before the board is Franklin Holland's petition for removal from the board's involuntary exclusion list. By way of background, on January 21st, 2020, while gaming at Rivers, Philadelphia, Mr. Hollins capped a wager resulting in him winning $240, to which he was not entitled. As a result of his actions, he was permanently evicted from Rivers, Philadelphia, and he was charged with a summary offense. Subsequently, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition to place Mr. Hollins on the involuntary exclusion list. A hearing was held on the matter, and thereafter, on August 11th, 2021, the board placed Mr. Hollins on the list for 2 years, at which time he could petition to come off the exclusion list. Mr. Hollins has now filed his request for removal from the involuntary exclusion list. Enforcement Counsel has no objection to the request. It has been over 2 years since he was placed on the exclusion list, and there is no evidence that he violated the board's order or otherwise engaged in criminal activity, and this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board grant Franklin Holland's petition for removal from the involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next before the board is the petition filed by Raymond Smith, also requesting removal from the involuntary exclusion list. On several occasions in June of 2017, while working as a slot technician at Sugar House Casino, which now operates as Rivers Casino Philadelphia, Mr. Smith stole vouchers totaling $676. He was terminated, criminally charged, and ultimately admitted into an accelerated rehabilitative disposition program in the criminal courts of Philadelphia. Consequently, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed to revoke Mr. Smith's gaming permit and to place him on the board's involuntary exclusion list. In March of 2018, the board issued orders both revoking Mr. Smith's permit and placing him on the exclusion list. Mr. Smith is now requesting removal from the exclusion list. He has paid full restitution and has successfully completed the ARD program. Enforcement Counsel has no objection, as it's been over 5 years since his placement on the list, and there is no evidence that he had violated the board's order relative to the exclusion or has been involved in any other criminal activity. And just to be clear, this is only to remove Mr. Smith from the list. He still is not permitted to work in the industry, and that matter stands. And this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant Raymond Smith's petition for removal from the involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano-Diaz second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Next, presenting withdrawals, surrenders, and reports and recommendations is Deputy Chief Counsel Chad Zimmerman.
Good morning, Commissioners. The next matter before the Board today pertains to several unopposed petitions to withdraw application or to surrender the credentials of the following individuals and entities: the Carlin G3 Trust, Evolution Pennsylvania LLC, Michael W. Smurfett Jr., Christopher Clark, Kevin Ciantar, Jonathan Jones, Julian Baisley, Enrico Bradamante, Bradley Gibson, the Duchossois Group, Inc., CDI Holdings LLC, Craig Duchossois, Martin Smith, Lawrence J. Wheeler Jr., Duncan B. McConnell, Jacob Joyce, City Op Holding Co., Racetrack Op Holding Co., LLNPA LLC, Johan Carbrink, Antoine Bonello, Philip E. Giuliano, the Pala Band of Mission Indians, N.G. Poker, Anthony J. Ravaggio, Bradley W. Gauchino, Casey S. Thompson, Robert H. Smith, Shauna S. Anton, Sheila Smith Lopez, Teresa J. Nieto, Teresa A. Villa, and William F. Bembenek. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objections to any of these withdrawals or surrenders. As a result, if the Board chooses to grant the request, in every case, it would be doing so without prejudice to the requester. And these matters are all now ripe for the Board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickernell moves that the Board issue orders to approve the withdrawals and surrenders as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes.
Next before the Board for consideration on the agenda are 10 reports and recommendations received from the Office of Hearings and Appeals. These reports and recommendations, along with the evidentiary record for each hearing, have been provided to the Board in advance of today's meeting. Additionally, the persons involved have each been notified that the Board would be considering their matter today and that each would have the opportunity to come forward and briefly address the Board. If any of the persons who are the subject of one of these reports and recommendations would like to address the Board, I would ask them to come forward when the matter is called. As an administrative matter, the first on the agenda is Joshua Lewis. Given some information that was garnered this morning, Mr. Lewis's matter is being removed from the agenda and will be relisted for a later date. So there is no action needed to be taken today by the Board on Mr. Lewis's matter. Moving on, Alexis Pulowski. Ms. Pulowski holds a gaming employee occupation permit and has been employed at Live Pittsburgh as a table games dealer. On November 29th, 2023, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a complaint seeking an emergency suspension of Ms. Pulowski's permit after receiving notice that she had been criminally charged with 7 felonies and 4 misdemeanor offenses pertaining to drug-related charges and charges involving the endangering the welfare of children. As a result of the charges, the Executive Director issued an emergency order suspending Ms. Pulowski's permit. A hearing in this matter was held on December 21st, 2023. OEC presented testimony and documentary evidence at the hearing. Ms. Pulowski appeared and testified on her own behalf. Evidence presented by OEC documented a joint investigation between several law enforcement agencies that resulted in the seizure of firearms, cell phones, ammunition, a bag of suspected cocaine, marijuana, and other THC products at Ms. Pulowski's residence. Ms. Pulowski testified at the hearing that she is innocent of all charges. However, they are still pending in the Court of Common Pleas. Following a hearing, a report and recommendation was issued recommending the suspension of her permit remain in effect, and this matter is now ready for the Board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the Board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the Board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that the emergency suspension, Alexis Pulowski's gaming employee occupation permit remain in effect.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Luz Velasquez is the next report and recommendation before the Board today. Ms. Velasquez holds a gaming employee occupation permit and previously worked as a table games dealer at Live Casino and Hotel in Philadelphia. Ms. Velasquez recently submitted an application to the Board for a non-gaming employee registration to work as a games presenter for Evolution US LLC. On October 16, 2023, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a complaint seeking emergency suspension of Ms. Velasquez's permit after receiving notice that she had been criminally charged with felony and misdemeanor offenses relating to a firearm stemming from a traffic stop. As a result of Ms. Velasquez's charges, the board's executive director issued an emergency order of suspension, suspending her permit. A hearing in this matter was held November of 2023. OEC appeared presenting testimonial and documentary evidence. Ms. Velasquez appeared and briefly testified on her own behalf. Following the hearing, a report and recommendation was issued recommending that the suspension of Ms. Velasquez's permit remain in effect given the fact that the charges against her were still pending and were disqualifying in nature. And this matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that the emergency suspension of Luz Velasquez's gaming employee occupation permit remain in effect.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next before the board is a report and recommendation pertaining to Kelly Biddle. On September 6, 2023, OEC filed a petition to place Ms. Biddle on the involuntary exclusion list after she allegedly created a fake police report and provided that report to an interactive gaming operator, BetMGM, to resolve a dispute. A hearing in this matter was held November 28, 2023. OEC appeared at the hearing and presented testimony and documentary evidence. Ms. Biddle appeared and testified on her own behalf. OEC's evidence and testimony showed that Ms. Biddle had made several complaints to BetMGM, an interactive gaming operator. Specifically, Ms. Biddle complained of her inability to access her account or withdraw the funds to the credit or debit card she had listed on her account. In August of 2021, Ms. Biddle was informed by BetMGM at one point that her account had a negative balance due to money being deposited in her account from a card that was not in her name and that was subsequently wagered and had to be returned to the card in question. Subsequently, Ms. Biddle had informed BetMGM that her bank account was overdrawn, blamed BetMGM for the overdraw, and that she was not aware that there were cards on her account that were not in her name. She also then questioned why she should have to repay that money. Ms. Biddle was instructed by BetMGM to provide a self-certified identification, which included a photo of herself holding her ID, as well as a police report to corroborate her claims of the fraudulent activity. Ms. Biddle did provide these documents. However, the police report contained several irregularities and mistakes, and upon further investigation by the board's Bureau of Gaming Operations, it was determined that the police department in question had never been contacted by Ms. Biddle, and the report was fraudulent. Consequently, Ms. Biddle was charged with forgery and admitted into the Accelerated Rehabilitative Disposition Program. During Ms. Biddle's testimony, she stated she did not dispute anything that OEC had presented, that her actions were stupid, and she is remorseful. She claims to have committed a criminal act, but is not a criminal herself. Ms. Biddle testified that she has completed her ARD program, that she's a mother, and her children are her main priority. She's concerned that they will someday learn of her actions. After hearing all the evidence presented, a report and recommendation was issued recommending that Ms. Biddle be placed on the board's involuntary interactive gaming exclusion list, and this matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickernell moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Kelly Biddle be placed on the board's involuntary interactive exclusion list.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next is the report and recommendation from Michael Chury. On January 6, 2023, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition to place Mr. Chury on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Chury failed to initially respond. However, prior to the matter coming before the board, he filed a hearing request. A hearing was held in September of 2023. OEC appeared and presented testimony, documentary, and surveillance evidence. Although receiving proper notice, Mr. Chury failed to appear. Testimony and evidence provided at the hearing showed that on May 26, 2022, while at Mount Airy Casino Resort, Mr. Chury, who was visibly intoxicated, was in possession of an airsoft pellet gun, and security and surveillance also found 2 tasers and 2 knives on his person. This was in violation of Mount Airy's policy on possession of weapons on their premises. He was arrested, charged with public drunkenness, and permanently banned from the casino. Consequently, a report and recommendation was issued recommending that Mr. Chury be placed on the board's involuntary exclusion list, and this matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Michael Cherry be placed on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? No.
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes.
Next is a report and recommendation for Dongwook Moon. On October 5th, 2022, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition to place Dongwook Moon on the board's involuntary exclusion list after it was alleged that he had been cheating while gaming at several casinos. A hearing in this matter was held in November 2023. OEC appeared presenting testimonial, documentary, and surveillance evidence. Mr. Moon appeared and testified on his own behalf. OEC provided evidence at the hearing showing that on 3 separate incidents while playing table games at Rivers Philadelphia, Lady Luck Casino in Nemacolin, and Rivers Pittsburgh, Mr. Moon was observed marking cards. Specifically, the surveillance report and testimony shows that at Rivers Philadelphia, he marked or bent 96 different times. The report from Lady Luck says that he bent or marked 7 cards, and the surveillance report from Rivers Pittsburgh alleges he bent approximately 17 times. He was permanently banned from each casino for his actions. Mr. Moon testified that he handles his cards in a rough manner and checks them frequently while he games, and that bending 96 cards doesn't make sense, as there would only be 16 high-ranking cards in the deck, that he ultimately lost money while gaming at Lady Luck, suggesting he didn't cheat, and he additionally stated that the surveillance pictures of the cards do not show that they are marked or bent. After hearing all the evidence presented, a report and recommendation was issued recommending that Mr. Moon be placed on the board's exclusion list. He did file exceptions to this report and recommendation, reiterating the nature in which he handles his cards and that he was not attempting to mark them. This matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickernell moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Dongwook Moon be placed on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion's adopted.
The next 2 matters stem from this identical set of facts and circumstances, so I will read one set of facts for both and then ask for a motion on each one independently. And the next reports and recommendation relate to Lisa Gonzalez and Donald Stipetich and a request by OEC to place them on the involuntary exclusion list. Hearings in both of these matters were held. Lisa Gonzalez's hearing was held July 20th of 2023, where OEC appeared. However, Ms. Gonzalez failed to. However, she later contacted the board clerk requesting the record be reopened. Request was granted. A new hearing date was scheduled in December of 2023, but she also again failed to appear. OEC did not enter any more evidence at that time. Donald Stipetich's hearing was originally held in August of 2023, where OEC appeared. However, Mr. Stipetich failed to appear. Once again, after receiving the report and recommendation, he requested the matter be reopened again by filing exceptions. The records were reopened. He also did not fail for his second hearing, and so these matters are now closed without their appearance. The undisputed evidence, therefore, provided by OEC at both hearings shows that on February 25th, 2022, a patron at Rivers Casino Pittsburgh reported to security that her bracelet, valued at $38,000, was missing. Surveillance was reviewed and it was discovered that Mr. Stipetich and his wife, Ms. Gonzalez, found the bracelet on the floor at the casino bar. They were admiring the bracelet, taking pictures with it, and then the couple left the casino within an hour finding the bracelet. Surveillance also shows them admiring the bracelets while in the elevators of the parking garage. Ms. Gonzalez was later contacted the next morning by the Etna Township Police Department. In response, she contacted the Pennsylvania State Police, denied being in possession of the bracelet. However, later that same day, the bracelet was returned to the Etna Township Police. Both Ms. Gonzalez and Mr. Stipetich were arrested and charged with theft-related felony offenses. Subsequently, a report and recommendation was issued on both matters recommending that the pair be placed on the involuntary exclusion list. Both these matters are now ready for the board's consideration. First, I would request a motion regarding Lisa Gonzalez's report and recommendation.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Lisa Gonzalez be placed on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Commissioner Manzano-Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next would be a motion regarding Donald Stipetich's report and recommendation.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickernell moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Donald Stipetich be placed in the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next report and recommendation stems from a request for removal from the board's self-exclusion list by an individual with the initials JP. The Office of Enforcement Counsel filed an answer objecting to the request. A hearing in this matter was held in May of 2023. OEC appeared and presented documentary and testimonial evidence. JP failed to appear for his hearing. Evidence presented at the hearing showed that on February 6, 2011, JP had properly filled out all self-exclusion paperwork, signing the acknowledgement selecting the lifetime self-exclusion period. On January 26, 2023, almost 12 years after placing himself on the list, JP filed a request for removal from the list as permitted by the board's regulations. However, JP failed to provide the required problem gambling assessment verification form signed by a certified assessment provider. Following the hearing officer issued an interim order permitting JP to sign a completed form by July of 2023. JP failed to do so, and in November of 2023, this report and recommendation was issued recommending denial of the request for failure to provide sufficient evidence in support of his request for removal. This matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that JP remain on the casino self-exclusion list.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The final report and recommendation before the board is another request to be removed from the board's voluntary self-exclusion list. KS states in his petition that while gaming online one night, something popped up on his screen and he mistakenly signed up for self-exclusion. The Office of Enforcement Counsel filed an answer objecting to the request to come off the list. A hearing in this matter was held November 2nd of 2023. OEC appeared presenting testimony and documentary evidence, and despite receiving notice, KS failed to appear and the hearing was held in his absence. The uncontested evidence shows that on June 12, 2023, KS properly filled out the exclusion form and signed the acknowledgement choosing the one-year exclusion period, acknowledging that he had reviewed the forms and understood the information available to him and that he could not request removal prior to the conclusion of the one-year period. Subsequently, the report and recommendation issued recommends that KS's request for removal from the self-exclusion list be denied, and this matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that KS remain on the casino self-exclusion list.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
That concludes the matters of the Office of Chief Counsel. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve and Chad. We will now have the Bureau of Licensing matters presented by the Director of Bureau of Licensing, Sean Hannon. Sean?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Today's first licensing matter for your consideration is the renewal of interactive gaming and sports wagering certificates for Category 1 licensee, PID LLC. The Bureau of Licensing, Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement, Bureau of Gaming Operations, and Office of Sports Wagering Operations has completed its review of the documents, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report for each. I have provided you with draft orders for each and ask that you first consider the renewal of PID LLC's interactive gaming certificates. PID LLC is renewing certificates for non-peer-to-peer games, which simulate slot machines, and non-peer-to-peer games that simulate table games. This matter is now ready for consideration.
Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Thank you, Cyrus. Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board grant the interactive gaming certificate renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next for your consideration is the renewal of PID LLC's sports wagering certificate.
Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Hickernell moves that the board grant the sports wagering certificate renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next licensing matter for your consideration is the slot machine manufacturer license renewal for NRT Technology Corp. The company was formed on September 23rd, 1993 in Toronto, Ontario, and manufactures ticket redemption and automated teller machines. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement has completed its investigation of the company, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report. I have provided you with a draft order and asked the board consider the order to renew the slot machine manufacturer license for NRT Technology Corp.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant the slot machine manufacturer license renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Also for your consideration is the video gaming terminal manufacturer license renewal for Every Payments Incorporated. Every Payments is licensed in good standing as a slot machine and video game terminal manufacturer. Under the Gaming Act, the board may use an abbreviated process to consider the application of a currently licensed manufacturer. The Bureau of Licensing, Office of Enforcement Counsel, and the Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement has reviewed the abbreviated application for a video gaming terminal manufacturer license for Every Payments, and I have provided you with the results of that review. I have also provided you with a draft order and asked the board consider the order to approve the video game terminal manufacturer license for Every Payments Incorporated.
Enforcement Council does not object.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board grant the video gaming terminal manufacturer license renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next, there are principal licenses. The Bureau of Licensing provided you with a proposed order for 18 principals. I ask that the board consider the order approving these licenses.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board grant the principal licenses as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
There are also principal and key employee temporary credentials. The Bureau of Licensing provided you with an order regarding the issuance of temporary credentials for 6 principals and 9 key employees. I ask the board consider the order approving these credentials.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant the temporary principal and key employee credentials as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alston?
Sorry, I was on mute. Aye.
Thank you. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Additionally, for your consideration are gaming employee permits and non-gaming employee registrations. The Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a list of 598 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted temporary or full occupation permits and 272 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted registrations under the authority delegated to the Bureau of Licensing. I ask that the board consider a motion approving the order.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board approve the applications for gaming employee occupation permits and non-gaming employee registrations as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next, there is a recommendation of denial for one gaming level 2, and one gaming service provider applicant. The Bureau of Licensing has provided you with the orders addressing the applicants who the Office of Enforcement Counsel has recommended for denial. I ask that the board consider the orders approving these denials.
Enforcement Council continues to request denial in each matter.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickernell moves that the board deny the gaming level 2, and gaming service provider employee applications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The next matter for your consideration is withdrawal requests. In each case, the license, permit, or registration is no longer required. For today's meeting, I've provided the board with 45 gaming and 16 non-gaming applicants. I ask that the board consider the orders approving these withdrawals.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant the withdrawal of key employee, gaming, and non-gaming employee applications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
In addition, we have an order to certify Encompass Develop, Design, and Construct LLC and RRC Gaming Management LLC, who are gaming service providers. I have provided you with a draft order and ask the board consider the order certifying these companies.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board approve the gaming service provider certifications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
Any questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion's adopted. I'm only human.
Yeah, it's all of us.
Finally, for your consideration, are gaming service provider registrations. The Bureau of Licensing provided you with an order and an attached list of 6 registered gaming service provider applicants. I ask the board consider the order registering these gaming service providers.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the gaming service provider registrations as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Sean. Next is the Office of Enforcement Counsel, Cyrus Petrie. Cyrus?
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. The Office of Enforcement Counsel will present 7 matters today for the board's consideration, in which we will request the approval of 2 consent agreements and 5 involuntary exclusions. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Category 2 licensee and iGaming certificant, Stadium Casino RE LLC, doing business as Live Casino Hotel Philadelphia. The matter will be presented by Senior Enforcement Counsel John Crow. Representatives for Stadium Casino are present, and at this time, I request that those individuals please introduce themselves for the record, and that all non-attorney witnesses please stand and be sworn.
Good morning. I'm Craig Clark. I'm the Executive Vice President and General Manager of Philadelphia Live.
I'm Kevin Hayes from the Sabre Law Firm. I represent Digital Gaming Corporation USA, who is a sports betting and iGaming operator. With me here today is Corey March, who is the Pennsylvania manager for operations for Digital Gaming Corporation USA, and he will need to be sworn in.
Okay.
And I'm Tom Deal, D-I-E-H-L, VP of Legal with Stadium Casino RE LLC, which does business as Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia.
Would you stand to be sworn, please?
If you could raise your right hands, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
So help you God.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, we see you may proceed.
Chair, members of the board, John Crow, C-R-O-H-E, Senior Enforcement Counsel for the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a consent agreement reached between Stadium Casino RE LLC, doing business as Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia, and the Office of Enforcement Counsel concerning unauthorized interactive gaming. Live Casino entered into an agreement with Digital Gaming Corporation USA, under which Digital Gaming Corporation USA participates directly in customer-facing iGaming and sports betting under the Betway brand. Between August 27, 2022 and September 11, 2022, unapproved college prop wager markets were offered as a result of failing to block these markets following a system update. While the unapproved markets were available, 90 wagers were placed in an amount totaling $5,406 with a total payout of $6,357. Following the incident, the unapproved college prop wager markets were blocked. the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Stadium Casino RE LLC, doing business as Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia, respectfully request that the board approve the consent agreement and stipulations of settlement, and that Stadium Casino RE LLC, doing business as Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia, pay a civil penalty of $10,000, as well as a $2,500 administrative fee for costs incurred by board staff in connection with investigations into this matter.
Thank you. Live, would you want to address the board at this time?
Yes, just briefly, I wanted to indicate that the recitation of facts as presented by OEC is accurate, and we are here available for questioning if necessary.
And can you put your mic closer?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? I'd like to know what actions you have taken to make sure this does not occur again.
Yeah, certainly. I would like to thank, quite frankly, Elena Portman of DGC, who's not here today. However, as you know, whenever you're involved in online gaming or sports wagering, it does require a team. And we're here in the capacity of the certificate holder. DGC is here as the capacity of the platform provider and operator. And once we received notice from the Gaming Control Board of the consent agreement, I immediately reached out to DGC and spoke with Elena, who was incredibly responsive. And she helped walk us through the process and put ourselves in contact with the remaining operators. This was an instance where the vendor that DGC was using at the time simply made a human error, as I understand it. They have a mechanism by which they would be able to catch prop wagers. And this was an instance where you had a prop bet placed on college games that were not yet approved by the Gaming Control Board. Once it was brought to their attention, they then immediately reported it to DGC, and then contacted the Gaming Control Board. What we did in this instance, one of the things that Elena and her company did was help us improve our communications. Because again, this was something that Live, as the certificate holder, did not realize at first. And then we realized as we're going back through the process and recreating what steps took place, we then put in place mechanisms where we'd be contacted immediately and be able to get involved in the process, quite frankly, earlier. Separate from this, independent of this, DGC was in the process of changing the vendors, and the vendor that was involved with that transaction at the time, again, as I understand it, independent of this, has been replaced by another provider, so that we're taking the lessons we learned here with respect to the human error that was involved in missing this prop wager, and putting safeguards in place to keep that from happening in the future. Now, with respect to the specifics of those safeguards, I would have to defer to DGC, which is why we have some of the representatives here today.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Kevin Hayes, I'm here on behalf of Digital Gaming Corporation. In short, Digital Gaming Corporation has communicated to its current platform provider, which is Marown, that college prop bets are not permitted in Pennsylvania and they cannot be accepted. That's been clearly communicated to them. Obviously, there was a system error that allowed this to occur back in September of 2022. As soon as we were made aware of it, the issue was investigated and made sure that all the parties involved understood that college prop bets cannot be accepted in Pennsylvania. So we've communicated that on an ongoing basis to our the platform provider, and to ensure that does not happen again.
And it has not happened since?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Malzahn-Diaz?
So with regard to the new company that has been told about what happened previously, can you explain to us what is the mechanism? So it appears that this went on for at least a month or so before it was discovered. So how is it that if there were to happen again, that you will be notified instead of a month later, but immediately? How would that work?
And I don't know if Corey may have better operational knowledge as to how that occurs, so I'll defer to Corey March.
Yes. Now that this has occurred, we're definitely more aware of it and proactive to search for it. That's actually part of my job responsibility, and I've since been hired since this occurrence to oversee the operational functionality of the product. So on a day-to-day basis, I am monitoring the site to make sure that nothing of this nature is occurring.
So you're getting reports on a daily basis on this?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Stadium Casino RE LLC doing business as Live Casino Hotel Philadelphia, as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted. Thank you very much for appearing, gentlemen.
Thank you.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and fantasy contest operator Crown PA DFS, Inc., doing business as DraftKings. The will once again be presented by Senior Enforcement Counsel John Crow. Representatives for DraftKings are present, and at this time, I request that those individuals please introduce themselves for the record, and that any non-attorney witnesses please stand and be sworn.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Kevin Hayes again on behalf of Crown PA DFS, Inc., which is the sports or the fantasy contest operator. Here with me today is Jacob List, who is the Senior Director of Regulatory Operations for DraftKings, and Mr. List will have to be sworn in.
Sir, please stand and be sworn in by the court reporter.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I hope you do that. And Mr. List, can you just spell your name for the court reporter, please?
The spelling of my name?
Yes,
That's Jakelist.
just like it sounds. Thank you. OEC, you may proceed.
Madam Chair, members of the board, John Crow once again for the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a consent agreement reached between Crown PA DFS, Inc., doing business as DraftKings, and the Office of Enforcement Counsel concerning an unauthorized fantasy offering. On August 17th, 2022, DraftKings began offering Rainmakers football contests in Pennsylvania. In Rainmakers contest, patrons utilized their own collection of digital player cards to create fantasy sports lineups and compete against each other in contests based on a fantasy point scoring system to win prizes funded by DraftKings. On August 24th, 2022, the board's executive director issued a letter to DraftKings demanding that DraftKings cease offering Rainmakers contests in Pennsylvania. On October 7th, 2022, DraftKings issued a confirmation email to board staff stating that Rainmakers contests were closed in Pennsylvania. On October 26, 2022, DraftKings discovered that a patron was able to enter a Rainmakers contest while physically located in another jurisdiction which did not permit Rainmakers contests due to a technical error. Upon further investigation, DraftKings discovered that patrons located in Pennsylvania were also impacted by the error and thus were also able to still participate in Rainmakers contests. On October 27th, 2022, DraftKings deployed an emergency release to correct the issue. In total, 201 individuals physically located in Pennsylvania were able to enter a total of 686 Rainmakers contests, following DraftKings informing board staff that Rainmakers contests had been closed in Pennsylvania. DraftKings thereafter removed all upcoming Rainmaker contest entries in which the user had entered from Pennsylvania. The Office of Enforcement Counsel and Crown PA DFS, Inc., doing business as DraftKings, respectfully request that the board approve the consent agreement and stipulations of settlement, and that Crown PA DFS, Inc., doing business as DraftKings, pay a civil penalty of $10,000 as well as a $2,500 administrative fee for costs incurred by board staff in connection with investigations into this matter.
Thank you. DraftKings, would you like to address the board?
With your permission, Madam Chair, briefly, we've listened to the recitation of the facts, as well as the facts set forth in the consent agreement and the conditions in that agreement. And on behalf of Crown PA DFS, we agree with them. As you know, Crown PA DFS, or DraftKings, was among the initial group of fantasy contest operators to begin operations in a regulated environment back in 2018. I represented Crown PA DFS before this board since 2018, and I can attest that they are firmly committed to ensuring regulatory compliance in all aspects of their operations. As Enforcement Counsel indicated, or as indicated in the consent agreement, this is the first consent agreement for Crown PA DFS, and it is the first consent agreement with regard to any of DraftKings operations in Pennsylvania. At this time, with your permission, Madam Chair, I'd like to introduce Jake List, who is here with me today. Again, Jake is the senior director of regulatory operations for DraftKings, who would like to offer a brief statement.
You may proceed, Mr. List.
Madam Chair and members of the board, good morning. Since launching its fantasy operations under the regulation of the PGCB in 2018, DraftKings has enjoyed a positive and productive working relationship with the members of your staff who have worked so diligently to launch fantasy sports, iGaming, and sports wagering operations in Pennsylvania. We value our relationship with the PGCB and appreciate the important role your agency has in maintaining the integrity of fantasy sports and gaming in Pennsylvania. We have taken responsibility for the incident as described in the consent agreement and put in remediations in place to make sure that it does not occur again. I appreciate the opportunity to appear in front of you today.
Any questions or comments? Commissioner Manzano-Diaz?
Could you please describe the remediations that you put in place? Because at first you thought you had remediated it, and apparently that was not successful. So now you have new remediations in place. Could you please describe that for the board?
Yes, that's correct. So apart from obviously shutting down the game correctly in the second instance, we have put monitoring in place which essentially will alert us for any entry into that specific game that is made in a prohibited jurisdiction, which includes Pennsylvania.
And this is a game that accepted NFTs, right? Yes, which we don't accept here.
This game involved in NRT is correct.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board approve the consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Crown PA DFS, Inc., doing business as DraftKings, as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The remaining matters on the agenda consist of enforcement actions in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed petitions seeking the involuntary exclusion of individuals whose presence in a licensed facility are inimical to the interests of the Commonwealth and are licensed gaming therein. In each instance, the petition for exclusion has been filed with the Board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the individual named in the petition. The individual named in each petition failed to respond within 30 days as required by Board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment in each instance and properly served the same upon each individual. Therefore, all facts in each petition are deemed admitted. All filed documents have been provided to the Board, and the matters are presently ripe for the Board's consideration. In each instance, if the Board orders the proposed exclusion, each individual's photo, personal identifiers, and a summary of their inimical conduct may be placed on the Board's public website. Once again, in each matter, we will provide a brief summary of the facts and make a request for the appropriate board action.
Good morning, Thomas Monahan, Monaghan, with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Tyler Bailey on the board's involuntary exclusion list. On multiple dates, Mr. Bailey cheated by pass posting his wagers while playing roulette at Wind Creek Bethlehem Casino. He was criminally charged and permanently evicted from Wind Creek for his actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board place Tyler Bailey on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickernell moves that the board approve the addition of Tyler Bailey to the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board's involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Michael Rowland, ROL A&D with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. Next on the agenda is a request to place Nira Hudson on the involuntary exclusion list. The Rivers Philadelphia Surveillance Department notified security that a blue Ford Mustang was driving recklessly on the property of Rivers Philadelphia Casino. Several vehicles and a patron were struck by the vehicle, which then drove from the scene. Nira Hudson was later identified as the driver of the vehicle when she was involved in a fatal accident in the city of Philadelphia. Ms. Hudson was criminally charged with 23 separate charges related to the incidents, 9 of which are felonies, and the charges are pending, and Ms. Hudson remains in custody. The Office of Enforcement Counsel now requests that the board place Nira Hudson on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board approve the addition of Nira Hudson to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Sarah?
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
The next 3 matters on the agenda are related and are requests to place Shakira Britton, Deshaun Singleton, and Rashid Mason on the involuntary exclusion list. With the board's permission, I will read one set of facts and then request that each individual be placed on the list. A Buick sedan was observed arriving at Parks Casino. Rashid Mason was then observed exiting the vehicle and entering the gaming floor. While on the floor, Mr. Mason met Deshaun Singleton, and the two proceeded to steal a total of $4,000 in chips from a table game float. The two individuals then fled out the west entrance to the D3 section of the parking lot, where they entered a Buick sedan, which was being driven by Shakira Britton. The 3 individuals then immediately sped off the property. Surveillance footage also shows that the vehicle license plate was covered by a piece of cardboard. Mr. Mason and Mr. Singleton were both criminally charged by the Pennsylvania State Police with robbery, theft by unlawful taking, receiving stolen property, and harassment. Mr. Singleton's criminal matters are pending, and Mr. Mason's criminal case is listed as inactive. Ms. Britton was not criminally charged. Specific to Mr. Singleton, he was also involved in a similar incident at Rivers, Philadelphia. He took $10,500 in chips in that incident. Specific to Mr. Mason, he was involved in a similar incident at Rivers, Philadelphia. He originally took $1,000 in chips. However, Mr. Mason abandoned the chips before leaving the casino, and they were recovered. The Office of Enforcement Counsel now requests that the board place Shakira Britton on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board approve the addition of Shakira Britton to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel now requests that the board place Deshaun Singleton on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the addition of Deshaun Singleton to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes.
And the Office of Enforcement Counsel now requests that the board place Rashid Mason on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickernell moves that the board approve the addition of Rashid Mason to the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board's involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Thank you. That concludes our business.
Thank you, gentlemen. The last item on the agenda today is public comment. Is there anyone in the room that would like to address the board? Seeing no one approach the front of the room, let's move to adjourn. So that concludes today's meeting. The next public meeting will be held on Wednesday, April 24th, 2024, at 10 a.m. at this location. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Commissioner Regan moves to adjourn.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's adopted. We are now adjourned. Thank you, Commissioners Dermody and Ralston, for participating. Take care. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Yep. Thanks, everybody.